For years, many drivers have raced their way around one of the more well-known short tracks in Washington state, South Sound Speedway. Well-known NASCAR competitors like Rick Corelli, Ron Hornaday Jr., and Angelo Ruck have all competed at the 3/8 mile facility in the past. But tonight, its drivers will be facing a new challenge, trying to win on the virtual stage. Who will translate their real-world racing abilities to the iRacing world? We're about to find out here on the Global SimRacing Channel. Good evening, everyone, and welcome to the first round of the South Sound Speedway eRacing Series, presented by Key Property Services, where service is key, and by United Roofs. From leak to peak, it's URS you seek. I'm Justin Prince. Alongside the move tonight is Joe Peak. Behind the scenes is our director, Sean Ambrose, and he's using cameras provided by Dougie Beard. Before we get into the main details on how this series will function throughout the next few weeks, let's take a look at our GSRC lap guide for tonight's venue for the opening round of this series, Concord Motorsport Park.
Concord was a very unique facility, a sort of mini Pocono featuring 3 turns at different radiuses. Short track racers from across the southeastern United States would come here in search of conquering that challenge, a place where the likes of Dale Jr. cut his teeth and also hosted the likes of Jack Sprague, Ernie Irvan, and Bobby Labonte. Turn 1 is the widest turn. At 14 degrees of banking, it'll be the fastest corner on the track. You'll carry a lot of speed down the short chute and into turn 2, which is banked at 11 degrees. You'll see a lot of guys who make this as straight as possible, and you probably won't get a lot of passing done here. But you fly down the backstretch and into turn 3, and while turn 3 is also banked at 14 degrees, it's narrower and has a tighter radius. That inside pit wall almost gives it a claustrophobic feeling. All that while dealing with the fact that this is the best passing on the track. But you need that good run to the outside wall to have a great run to the start-finish line. Concord hosted all the short track cars. Weekly street stocks often stole the show. Late models were also known for setting quick track times here. And super late models held numerous special events with several organizers. But as Modified's popularity increased in the Southeast, their appearances increased at Concord, and many of its marquee events in its later years were tour mods. Concord was sold and shut down in 2019, and while it's turning into a salvage yard, the track surface and grandstands are still intact, giving hope that racing may one day return to the world's fastest half-mile tri-oval.
That was a look at a GSRC lap guide for Concord. Now, Joe, as we get ready for this race, this is going to be an intriguing one because you have a mix of virtual drivers who have experience on the sim and real-world drivers. What should we expect for these drivers today in these cars here at Concord?
Well, I think it's going to be quite a challenge, especially to kick things off, because these are twitchy little machines, very short wheelbase. And when they're loose, they're very loose. And around here, you'll see them definitely get loose, especially in the hot conditions we'll talk about in a bit. Both in turns 1 on the exit as you're trying to crank in the steering and get as much speed off. You might see drivers get a little greedy. And then as well, trying to square off the exit of turn 4, coming back onto the main straight. I found that the car really wants to get out from underneath you, and especially if you hit that little apron down at the bottom, which the drivers are going to be flirting to get as close to as possible for the best lap time. So don't be surprised if we have a number of yellows as drivers lose control and turn it around, but hopefully we'll get clean racing and they'll get adapted quickly.
We'll have to see how these drivers fare out tonight. Still plenty of preparation for tonight. Take the time to remind you of the presenting sponsors throughout the next few weeks of this series. Key Property Services Incorporated is a locally owned full-service property management, real estate, and construction contracting company. KPS has been servicing the greater Clark County area for more than 30 years. For more information, visit kpsinc.net. Key Property Services, where service is the key. And by United Roofs. As specialists in residential and commercial roofing services, we are dedicated to providing customer service that is second to none. Whether you have a new construction project or it is time for repairs, we offer the roofing services you need. To learn how to book a free estimate, go to unitedroofs.com. Now, the interesting thing, Joe, is going to be your details for this championship as these drivers get ready to go racing for the first time tonight.
Absolutely. We are in round 1 out of a 12-round season. Now, that also includes 2 special bonus rounds that they're going to have that won't count towards the championship. Now, you see that we've got the Legends 4, the 34 Coupe in iRacing marked on here. That won't be the car they're driving all season long. That's for this round, and I believe they appear one more time. 125 lap race around here. That sounds like a lot, but they actually go pretty quickly, even in these low-powered machines. They do have a spare car as well sitting around. So if they get damage, which can be easy with, like I said, how loose they are, they can duck into the pits and take a spare machine. They also have an incident limit. If you get up to 35, you're going to be DQ'd on the spot. Really hoping we don't get anybody with that many incidents throughout this race. That's our race details there, Justin, and I'm looking forward to this first round.
It's going to be entertaining to see which drivers can fare around this track. Practice times, your top driver at the top of the board just so happens to be a well-known Northwest Regional iRacer who runs in various Northwest racing-based competitions. That club known for many different tracks and many different series. Travis Barnes is that driver on the top of the board over Kenneth Garber, Isaac Gill, and Chris White. On the pylon, Eric Johnson Jr. rounding out your top 5 in practice. This all while it's a very hot track today in Sim Day, iRacing Day, May 15th, 2020, high noon, 130 degrees.
Yeah, it is scorching since the sun is just smack dab in the middle of the sky right now, and that's going to make it all the worse. Considering how many laps that they have to do, I get the feeling taking care of your tires is going to be at a premium, being able to stretch those out. I do not believe that they have any limit on their tires here. So if they do decide to come in for a pit stop, they can come in and get some fresh rubber. Honestly, not a bad idea if you have a long green flag run and can get in there. But ultimately here today, Justin, I'd say keeping the rears from slipping and spinning them up on corner exit is going to be critical.
To correct you on that, by the way, there is 5 tire sets available in the pits for the 125 lap race today. Now, as we talked about, there's a mix of drivers from the real world and virtual. The drivers from the virtual world to keep an eye on: Chris White, who runs in the Northwest Cup Series and Truck Series throughout the weekdays, one of the top competitors there. He's 4 from the practice charts. Travis Barnes runs some various races in that sanctioning body. If you recognize those names, some of those drivers from that respective region have raced in the past from some of the predecessors even to the major series, because if you remember, it started as the Pacific Majors. Some of the competitors from the Northwest Club raced in that series. But the real world drivers are also here tonight. The driver at the bottom of the pylon was your Baby Grands champion in 2020 for South Sound Speedway. It is Derek Presley, his fastest lap at 18 flat. That's half a second off the top time by Travis Barnes.
In the Pacific Majors, because we've covered them for quite a few years. Is Travis Barnes by any chance related to Brian Barnes?
Big crash for the Ford. Derek Presley upside down as they continue to crash down the front straightaway here. Let's talk about how you want to try and play this race out tonight, because you have drivers who are comfortable on the track, known for reputations as clean drivers, while others who may be getting acquainted to the sim here and there for tonight, who may be coming over from the real world facility. How do you plot this race about, knowing there could be a lot of unpredictability tonight?
Well, for me, especially when I think that that's going to be the case, I've always tried to maybe race a little bit more within my limits, not try to push it as hard. That's been one of my strengths, honestly. What few I have in racing is just being able to keep the car whole and consistent. And in a race like this, I think that'll really help you out a lot. You can see when things go wrong, they go wrong quickly in these cars. The wheelbase kind of sticks out a little bit and it grabs the wall. I found in practice that it's very easy to cause them to tumble. So you don't have a small accident in these things. If you scrape the wall, expect it to start to try and climb it and potentially even roll.
We've already seen that a couple times in practice tonight. See how well these drivers handle this track, and keep in mind this used to be a rookie track back in the day with these respective cars, so it's a vintage track which is being preserved in history, because similar to tracks like Myrtle Beach or Oran Park, which were broadcasted on GSRC today, this track is also now recently been shuttered as of 2019. So iRacing, a way to keep this facility preserved.
Yeah, here's hoping that maybe someday it can come back, because they haven't torn down the track itself or the grandstand, so it could be salvaged. And here's hoping. We definitely need short tracks, especially around the U.S., as that's such a crucial part of the motorsports culture here in the States.
Practice now wrapping up. Qualifying is 5 minutes. Solo qualifying, 3 total laps available on the board, so an extra lap more than usual. These drivers looking to set their best times, of course, throughout the session. Now, keep an eye on some of these drivers. Eric Johnson, one of the first. Presley, also now on the racetrack early on. Scott Degenstein, also back on the racetrack for the start of qualifying. A majority of the competitors jumping on the circuit very early here, Joe, to start Q.
Yeah, since it is static out there today, I don't believe they're going to see much change. So really, there's no point in waiting too long, because you're not going to get a cloud or anything. As we've got Eric Johnson, I think one of the first out there. We're watching Ryan McLeod try to get one in. I'm curious to see if the first lap is going to be the quickest, though, considering how hot the track surface is, if that'll make the tires go away too quickly.
Yeah, that could be critical here. This is one of the tracks a lot of short track racers on the service run a ton of. Eric Johnson Jr. to the top of the board with a 17.8. Presley an 18.3 to start off. Taking a look at him and looking like the pace is going to potentially pick up with each lap and more momentum put on the track. If for those worried about him, don't worry. He says he's done this on Xbox. If you look at his back bumper.
Eric Johnson coming around to get a second lap, third lap actually. You're right, they are increasing, going down bit by bit each lap. McLeod actually had his second lap discounted, and he's slowing down on his third. So McLeod's not going to overtake Johnson.
Interesting. Here's Chris White. Of note, by the way, keep an eye on Travis Barnes. Finished P3 in your mini stocks point standings. He's coming across the stripe for his first recorded lap. Doesn't put it up on the board. Yes, it does. A 17.706 with the calculation. Just a little bit off Isaiah Gill's time, rather, at the top of the board.
Gill has overtaken Johnson. Barnes now on the front row as he comes across for his second lap. 17.9. Ooh, 2/10 slower. That's significantly slower for the 11.
Yeah, a little bit surprising there. About a 10th slower now for Gill as he decides, I'm done with qualifying. I'm going to the wall. You see Presley also off to the pit lane. He's not your slowest qualifier. That is Nate Garski at the moment. The drivers yet to put in a timer: Kyle Matthews, Kenneth Garber, Jeff Peterson, Scott Degenstein. Of note, those drivers had tried to record times. However, some of them have not been able to put a time up on the board, while others are taking this time for practice here to get extra acquaintance now with the track, such as Chris White you see now deciding, I've had enough practice time, while others like Chris Torres are saying, it's time for flyer time and into the wall time.
So Chris on what was, I believe, his third lap. He should be done. Degenstein's out there, but I think he's having some connection issues as he's blinking a lot on my screen. So at this one, I think that leaves Kyle Matthews, unless Scott's connection problems. No, it's not going to count a lap for him, unfortunately. It looks like all three are gone from discontinuity.
Matthews, the only driver outside of Kenneth Garber to not put in a time. Matthews is actually coming out on the racetrack, Joe. So he's trying to set in a time despite a fixed sky in his number 29 to actually qualify at the dead end of the session.
All right, here he goes, and he's taking his time to get out there. I think he'll have enough to get all 3 laps in still with about a minute left. Now he starts to pick up the pace. Let's see what he's got. He seems to think he has something special sitting and waiting. He goes all the way down to the apron impressive that he was able to do that and not spin the car out.
He ran a 17.791 as his fastest time in practice. The pole time is a 17.689. First lap nearly spun it around an 18 flat. Decent first lap. That's good for fifth.
Out of the first turn, and he bangs it into the wall. Well, that's not going to work. So I think that might be his qualifying over, because that should start him on his third lap. And this next one, oh, well, he's going to.
I don't think he's got enough time.
Yeah, I think you're right.
So that's going to likely be the end of qualifying. Now, with what you've seen in practice and qualifying, now your keys to the race tonight when we get rolling in a few moments.
Exactly what we were talking about earlier. It's just keeping the car together, keeping it whole, staying patient, and being easy on your equipment, waiting for the right time. If you've got the pace, just stick with the leaders and stay out of trouble.
As mentioned, not enough time for Matthews to set another lap. His qualifying has now wrapped up. It's time to get ready for your starting grid for the opening race of the South Sound Speedway eRacing Series. 125 laps on the docket. They'll be led by Isaiah Gill to the green flag tonight, with Travis Barnes, one of the top drivers in the mini stocks this season, in second. Eric Johnson Jr. will start in P3 with Chris White, one of the top competitors in Northwest Racing Series sanctioned competition, in P4. Kyle Matthews will start in fifth in the 29 car, with Chris Torres, one of the newcomers for that respective series mentioned with White, in sixth. Ryan McLeod starts in seventh with Sean Jones, Derek Presley, and Nate Gartsky rounding out your qualifiers for tonight, Joe. Four other cars, Garber, Peterson, Race Control, and Dagenstein for tonight's race.
Thankfully, I don't think we're going to have Race Control out here, as it looks like he is not in the session. That was just a small error from the admins. So 3 more cars, 13-car field. And for this half mile, that's probably just about right for these cars. It gets clogged up pretty quick, especially with how few places there are to pass here.
By the way, Race Control, they did turn some laps in practice. We're 1.1 seconds slower than your fast time, for reference sake. Now, for this race, this is going to be intriguing how this all plays out. How do you all play things out as a driver now in this race once we get things going green now? Fuel is going to be tight for fuel. Drivers are also being informed they may have to stop for tires, Joe.
Yeah, and as you mentioned, with 5 sets, they got to kind of pay attention to that. If we get cautions, they can't just come in willy-nilly and take it every single time. They have to kind of plan it out and see how much they're worth around the track, especially if we get green stops too. Definitely going to be something where, especially if these drivers are a little bit new to one another, you kind of want to give each other a little bit of a wide berth, if it was me out there. Until you get used to how certain drivers race, you don't necessarily know their habits, how they tend to defend or attack and things like that. And because in oval racing, things tend to run a lot closer to one another, you just got to give that extra little bit of space so that you see the end, you see the checkered flag.
Cars are now rolling, and the interesting thing is, with the way the cars are set up for tonight, some of the series take the opportunity for some of the baselines or track-specific setups. Massive amount of toe in and out on these tires, about at least 5-10 plus degrees to the right for these cars tonight on the front tires.
That's unfortunately one thing that I tend to not fiddle with, as setups are just not my bailiwick. Tend to try and get in the car and just drive it and do minimal tweaking on that end. But looks like as we're getting ready to go after the next lap, the Mustang pace car is going to give Isaiah Gill the control of the field here soon.
He'll be in the Yoo-Hoo car tonight. 24 machine battling with Travis Barnes for this start. The South Sound Speedway eRacing Series is all set to go. We're underway from Concord.
Oh, and already...
And we're already wrecking. And we're already under caution. Well, that was fast. Chris Torres upside down.
Yeah, I think he got just a little bit... No, it was the car in front of him that got loose. It was Kyle Matthews, I believe. Yeah, that's Matthews below in the red and blue machine. You see him just get a little death wiggle. And, well, Torres was in the wrong place at the wrong time.
don't think you would have wanted to use the faster pair on lap 1. Here's another look. Keep in mind, a newcomer to iRacing here.
Oof, yeah, a hard hit. I'm actually impressed that the car's still out and running, both of them, with the slam that you can see that the 29 took on his right side. If we could get a view on Torres, that car is pretty mangled, but he's not gone into the pits yet.
I think he's trying. Problem is, I think that car may have just died on him.
Well, he's waiting for cars to go by so that he can get back where he was supposed to be.
Yeah, they're all having to let the pace car by. That's why.
Ah, there we go.
Because they had this happen where the pace car hadn't even been falling in the pit box. This could going to have to be planned out here. And Torres nearly missed the pits.
Last second call there.
Did I mention this guy has ran for a good while on the sim?
He's unfortunately not going to live that one down well. He made it in, thankfully. These things have a very tight turn radius, so he was able to squeak it in there.
An interesting start, and it's going to take a little bit to sort things out. There is discussion from race control because of the timing of the caution. They're going to potentially manually restart this race because of when this race had the green flag, most of the field didn't even cross the stripe. Scoring has to be recalculated here, and so this will have to be resorted. This is an iRacing situation here that drivers will manually sort themselves out. Drivers are being told to follow what's being said in race control as the 04 just came across somebody's nose and nearly spun out. EOL penalty, by the way, Tom Matthews under this caution.
Yeah, Matthews being the 29, he was the one that caused the wreck. I'm assuming that's the reason they're giving him the EOL.
So this is going to take some time to potentially sort. So here's what they're going to do here. They're going to be sending a lot of cars to the back here because of the time of the caution flag. So everyone's being told to get around and work around with the one-to-go signal, who's to make sure no one gets a black flag. Race control will be assisting the drivers here because they'll be told to restart the way things are going to go and wait until they reach at least the first yellow line. Then they will sort themselves out proper, believe, is what we're being told. They're being told the drivers are. Currently, 7th on back is currently pinned at the moment. So this is a confusing start to this one. We'll see how they sort everything out here now they pass the stripe.
Well, it looks like everybody is up to pace, but we still got drivers that are a lap down, including McLeod, Garber, Presley, Degenstein, Peterson, Garski, and Torres.
They're asking about now how many drivers are scored, and there it is to sort it back out. Jeff Peterson pit. Scott Degenstein with a bit of trouble in the 13.
Yeah, I don't think that was thrown manually.
You're right. The 13 brought it out, and that may have just helped sort things out for these cars.
Yeah, that's Degenstein, who unfortunately was on his lid. Easy to get into that outside wall here, out of turn, or the final turn. Looks like he's thankfully got his internet sorted out recently. Ooh, and someone was having to take evasive action, figuring out which way that jack was tumbling.
So now things will be sorted out here. They can wave cars around here. Race control can, if they choose to do so.
Listening to the control here.
They're still trying to sort things out here. It's going to be interesting how this all plays out here.
Yeah, they're looking to try and sort this out. Unfortunately, this is just one of the small bugs that can happen when some of the sort of fringe cases happen here on the sim.
Let them sort things out here behind the pace car for a few moments. We'll be back in just a moment. Let's go side by side. You're watching Global SimRacing Channel. You may have noticed the pace car dropped off during the side-by-side. They are still sorting out the running order here. Justin Prince, Joe Peak, Sean Abrams in the director's seat. One more lap for the drivers will allow drivers to sort out. Single file restart is what drivers are being told. They will go off the leader. This time by it's Gill, Johnson Jr., White, Kyle Matthews, Barnes, Jones, Garber, McLeod, Presley, and Peterson, your top 10. The other cars in the lead lap, Chris Torres, Karski, and Dagenstein are several laps down after early trouble in this one, Joe. A very interesting start to the series.
Yeah, we're already down to 11 cars, and we haven't had a full lap of green quite yet. So hopefully we'll get things going. Gill's going to lead the way.
Gill's in control of him this time. By, off and away they go. Green flags out. We're back underway from Concord.
Travis already trying to put a challenge on the number 29. He's able to go around the outside, interestingly. Great start there from the 11.
Matthews didn't use his fast repair. Does have significant right side damage still from that lap one before the start incident. He also had a massive jump on everyone else because McLeod and about 7th on back was caught sleeping and checked up the whole back half of the field by about 2 seconds. Fastest lap so far, the 11 to Travis Barnes.
Bill's holding that top spot, but look at how much that Johnson Jr. is challenging him here. He's sticking right to the bumper. In fact, you could say it's a bit of a train up with the top four, because it looks like White and Barnes are doing much the same.
Very consistent. They do have lap traffic, and Nick Gartsky up the road in the 04 machine, who is fresh off the pit lane after several laps of repairs. Now, the lap traffic in the middle of the racing line, just about. Travis Barnes to the bottom, taking away P3.
Great heads up there from Barnes to see that coming. He already had a run. He knew that White was going to be distracted, just slipped inside. That's going to move him up to 3rd. Remember, he was very quick in both the warm-up and qualifying, so I'm not surprised to see him quickly get into the podium positions.
Remind you that live timing and scoring is available for tonight's action at GSRC.tv to keep up with your favorite teams and drivers. Again, GSRC.tv as the battle for second. Gill right underneath. Travis Barnes able to move up the spot.
3 positions in just a few green flag laps. If I was the number 24, I'd be sweating a little bit as things get tight between the 14 and the 11. That's actually going to slow down Johnson Jr. He's going to lose his spot instead of gaining one.
Backing up that time to allow the position, going for the cross now on Chris White. White a little bit of a bobble for the battle for 3rd. Johnson is back into P3 as a result of the crossover. So these cars scrapping pretty well, separated by 1.3 seconds among the top 4.
We got 2 battles among them, one for 3rd and one for the lead. Because already Barnes has attached himself to the rear bumper of that 24. But we're not seeing as decisive a moves. Remember, it was just a lap or 2 for him to get by the other cars before. And now he's just kind of parked it and is watching. So I guess it gives a little bit more weight to this 24.
Look on the board. They were evenly matched on pace so far. Here with a decent amount of sim racing experience, Barnes with a decent amount of sim racing experience and real world experience. Just looks a little quicker in turn 3. Gill has been good in turns 1 and 2 though.
And it seems that Barnes is very brave about how close he gets to the outside wall in 3. He just takes it right up against it. You can see there too, he's taking a little bit more track, and that might look like inches, but those little bits of track make all the difference. It's those small margins that allows him to be this much faster.
Looking to peek underneath, under 100 laps to go already in this race. Gill clips the apron though, Barnes forced to check up. Barnes just hasn't been able to poke yet, Joe.
Here's where it gets tough though, is because they are so close on pace, it's so hard to pass here. Here into turn 3 is probably your best opportunity, but even then you're braking very late. As you can see, they're late apexing it, and he's going to go up to the high side as a bit of a defense from Gill. This corner is just a little lift, and they're going to have a drag race down the backstretch here.
Gill forced down to the bottom. Barnes trying to give the squeeze from the top line. Can he carry the momentum, or will he scuff the wall? Barnes carries the momentum to the race lead, this time by Gildo, still charging hard. Can't keep it though. Travis Barnes to the point.
Well, his selfie game might not be that great, but he is very good on the track. The 11 has essentially gone from 5th to 1st on this run. We got a caution.
And
it's Skarsky.
the 04 machine on the bottom of the racetrack. Very rough start to the season in the series for him. Puts us back under yellow once again with 93 to go.
So I think almost looks like maybe this started in turn 3 and carried on all the way to the first corner. Yeah, you can see he starts to get a little loose, and then it gets a death wobble. And he unfortunately bangs the corner. That's what you don't want to do, is get that suspension all bent up. So I believe he may have already taken a spare car, considering he's been in the pits significantly. And I'm not sure that we'll see him. Well, no, he's able to continue. Maybe he's okay.
Believe he'll be okay. Did have 5 laps of repairs already on that car. So the Hudson Matthews Racing crew member with a rocky beginning of the series, but a strong start to the series for Travis Barnes and Isaiah Gill. 1-2, they've been the top cars all night so far.
So how is it going to be on the restarts, though? It looked pretty good last time, considering how quickly he made up spots there. But it's a different ball game when you're up at the front. You got to learn how to time those. You got to try and send it into the first corner strong and watch to see if the car next to you gets a run. If Gill could maybe catch him napping. Judging by what I've watched of Travis, though, I think he's going to be okay. He seems to have some great chops in this series.
Gill runs a lot of different short track series based in the Northwest. Does the rear world side, yes, but on the virtual side, runs with the Northwest Tour, runs some super late models. You have to think about this. The Northwest Club on iRacing is probably the most tightly knit in all the United States and North America in general, because they run in so many series together, and a lot of them have ran for upwards of a decade on iRacing together.
Yeah, and that's why you saw things like those, the Pacific Majors is now just the Majors, become so wildly popular in a well-run series. We're going to start double file this time as opposed to what we had with our manual start before.
Drivers trying to warm up their tires. No one using any sets yet in this race. It's talked about expected to be good on the gas. Speaking of the gas, Barnes hits his gas pedal. Off and away by a decent margin, already up by 0.4 of a second into turn 1.
Everybody gets out of turn 3 clean this time. Nice to see them figuring that one out. But boy, Barnes is off like a shot. The 24 is already actually dropping back into the clutches of the 14 behind him. We got a good battle back there for 4th, though, with Garber leading White and Matthews.
Some good scrapping so far. Keeping an eye on Kenneth Garber, you mentioned his name. He's a +7 in this race.
Yeah, he's been doing fantastic. Probably our hard charger thus far. As they start to now get up to pace. And we got a caution. Oh, and it's Dagenstein and Garski.
There's a 35-point incident limit for tonight, and we were talking about it would be very hard to reach it. These cars are in contention to reach it.
Yeah, and those contacts like that, we just saw that the 04 got from the 13. That's 4 incidents for those that aren't familiar with how iRacing works. Car contact is worth more than it is if you spin or hit the wall. Usually if you have grass, there's also that, but there's no bits of grass that the drivers can hit on this track. So it's really those you got to watch out for more, in which the drivers have car contact. And Barnes is in.
Him and Eric Johnson and Chris Wilder using their first tire set available. Now, the interesting thing is going to keep in mind how long the pit stops are going to be with these Legends cars, since normally you don't expect to see even a green flag pit stop. in these cars, looking pretty sporty. It's important how much fuel you end up putting in these cars. As you see, for example, about 25 seconds, the normal pit stop time. Barnes is already upwards of 30 seconds.
So Barnes is going to get back out on the lead lap, thankfully, but he's lost a lot of track position. So I'm looking at the lap times. There's a 17.9, a 17.9, 18.5. So it does look mildly slower by a couple tenths than what he had at the start of the previous stints. This could be a good call. It all depends on how easily he can weave through the traffic. The problem here, Justin, is when you put yourself at the back of the pack with a bunch of twitchy cars, you increase the risk rate exponentially.
100%, and that's 100% a concern potentially here. Some cars who have struggled on the starts, and Bob, they are switching to single file restarts now for this race. Single file restarts after another caution.
Don't blame them, although those we've seen worse on restarts before. Didn't think it was too terribly bad, but you know, better safe than sorry. Want good clean racing here. I think we'll get the lights off this time by here.
I believe so. To reset the drivers who stayed out, Gil, Garber, Kyle Matthews, Derek Presley, Sean Jones, all elected not to pit. 6-second stop earlier in this race as well for Jeff Peterson. He's had already a faster pair done. Chris Torres took tires. McLeod apparently did not take service, but is still scored an 8th with how the scoring was for him having trouble early. Johnson and Barnes, the other cars in the lead lap. Warning just given to the 04, if he causes one more crash, he will be done for the night. Gil off and away, we're back racing.
So now he doesn't have Travis Barnes close behind him with a lot more cars to try and get through. That gives Gil the chance to try and pull away if he's got better pace than Garber. If I was him, that would be my strategy here. Just see if I can get that 24 machine with some air between itself and the rest of the field.
Great launch for your race leader. The drivers with the fresher tires, though, are also going to have to find their way around Chris Torres, Sean Jones, Jeff Peterson, who are already holding up a ton right now. You see your leader single file? It's 2-3 wide, though, into turn 3 with the fresh tires with some of those cars.
Yeah, and the 11's already got one spot. Make that 2 as he gets underneath Torres. It looks like he's taking his spare car at some point. He's going to get another one with Peterson. That moves Barnes up to 7th already.
Already missing the corner, though. Sean Jones opens up the door for the fresh tires to go on by. Chris Torres, though, got held up a ton and is still getting held up by Jeff Peterson. Just made contact behind this grouping. Lost at least 3 spots in several seconds from some of these cars.
Yeah, when you start to lose your momentum, unfortunately, as much squirt as these things have, they're not powerful enough that you're not going to be susceptible when you lift when you shouldn't. So you really need to stay in the groove. You need to stay on the racing line, or else you're just going to get freight trained like that. Barnes now up to 5th already.
Derek Presley driven on by that time. Eric Johnson Jr. is leading the cars in the fresh tires, by the way. The difference looking like going to be partly the fuel numbers in the cars. 11-second longer stop, remember, for Barnes. Does not matter. Barnes with the raw pace to the bottom of the racetrack. Looking to take it away. Just about did. Apologizing on the radio as he cuts off the front bumper bar.
2.8 seconds behind Isaiah Gill right now. That is your mark. And he's been dealing with traffic. He's going to get another one. Kyle Matthews, who was slow on the backstretch, lets him by with ease.
Drivers say Nerf bar. That is something drivers can be touchy upon. Currently 2.4 seconds behind your race leaders, and the thing is, you have to think about if we have an error incident, not to theorize there. You see the lap time difference. Eventually, Gil and them are going to have the fresher tires instead for the next run.
Yeah, but look at how much faster, even in traffic, that Barnes is. This is what a smart driver is going to be taking note of if they've got the time to pay attention to that, or if they got a crew chief, that those fresh tires are worth more than the track position, at least at this point in the race, as tough as it is to pass. Speaking of which, we got a pass for the lead.
Partly wide that there was a second lost in about 2 laps. Kenneth Garber to the race lead. Able to wheel his way down the bottom side of the 96.
Wonder if he was holding on to those tires a little bit better than the 24, because he didn't have pace on him earlier on in this race, but now suddenly it looks like he's able to dispose of him without too much hassle, and I think we're going to see Barnes do likewise because he's already caught him.
2 seconds reeled in at about a lap. That's how important the fresh tires are tonight, it looks like early on, and the caution's out. It is Jones.
Yep, he's got himself facing the wrong way on the front stretch. Now, he's been having some connection problems, so I don't think we'll be able to get much of a replay on this. And I'm not entirely sure what happened, as it seems that when he reappeared, he was suddenly turned around amidst a bunch of cars.
He was defending somewhat hard in some of the sections. Been an iRacer since October of last year. Already a high IR, one of the highest in this race tonight.
Ooh, Gill is in.
400s, and that's it to be expected. We were talking about that moments ago. The vice versa. Now everyone who stayed out the last caution, Joe, gets to take a set of tires.
And we're past a quarter of the way through. In fact, we're getting close to the halfway point pretty soon. So I wonder if Gill may be trying to split this one in two, potentially. You can see him going up on the jacks. It was awful tight with Barnes, though, staying on the lead lap last time, so you can't dilly-dally.
See, they have to individually lift the front tires up, then they have to individually jack up the rear tires. Keep in mind that in normal racing for these cars where they run at tracks like Charlotte, Atlanta, several other short tracks, they have the chance under cautions, or not under caution, between races rather, to make adjustments, change up the cars, etc., to give drivers opportunities.
Not typically a pit stop car, both in the sim and here, and in real life. So this time it's going to be Garber taking the restart with Barnes behind him. Getting a little bit of chatter. Sorry, go ahead.
The discussion right now. Jones back on the racetrack. Garber, Barnes, Johnson, Torres, McLeod, your top 5. Chris White was your lucky dog. Gill, first car on fresh tires here. Lights still on, expecting 64 to go when we go back racing again. Who's impressed you the most, in your opinion, tonight, though, outside of Barnes and Gill?
You're gonna take the easy ones away from me. Garber, for taking the lead when we weren't expecting it, is definitely the other one that has wowed me. Kind of proved himself a little bit of a dark horse here. It could potentially disrupt the apple cart. Now, worth noting that Gill has far fewer cars to overtake than Barnes did, but he hasn't seemed to have had the same raw pace as Barnes. So kind of leaves me with a question mark. Is he going to be able to run him down on fresh rubber, or is it going to just even them out?
I'm curious that too. There is a disqualification. The 04, Nate Garski, has been parked for reckless driving. He went full throttle into that crash down the front with the 00 and smacked him as he tried to turn it around. We're back racing, and that was quick. Barnes to the race lead.
So now that he's got clear air, this could be bad news for everybody else behind him. Gill's already managed to get himself into 5th. That's 1 spot down.
Garber has not pit once this race, so those are 62 old lap-old tires now, compared to 22 lap-old tires attacking him. The 5 lap-old tires are already 1.8 seconds behind. Gill is coming in quick.
That explains why we saw Garber up where he was, just a bit on strategy, but he's making good on it. He's still on the podium. Here we come with Isaiah Gill, looking much, much faster. The car lengths between them is getting fewer by the second.
See him there as Garber gives him space. Tons of space, in fact. Still got to close up 2 seconds. It is a bit of a bigger difference, about 15-20 laps or so. Fresher tires now on Gill's car, as well as everybody else here. Already 60 to go, just past halfway.
I asked the question earlier on whether or not it'll even them out or give the advantage to Gil. It looks like it's evening it out. 17.7s and a 17.8 for Gil. Barnes 17.7 straight through so far in this restart. So he's unfortunately not gating. We got another caution, this one with Matthews.
So Matthews, significant left side damage.
Oh, yeah, he's going to clip the outside. This is easy to do when you get greedy on the exit. And when he clips the outside, that just bounces the car back down. And unfortunately, with that inside wall, it just spins him around like a top.
Yeah.
You really are, with that first corner.
He's still spinning in live action. This is live. Matthews spun it again down the front and nearly collected the leaders.
Oof. And he's still got to come back in and get some repairs done. So this just makes a bad day worse.
He'll get to stay on the lead lap here because he didn't necessarily get past with the caution trigger. He spun out once the positions were locked in. Still though, none of the lead cars coming in, except for a couple. Garber, Torres, and White electing to take some tires this time.
All right, so a few more seeing the value of the fresh rubber. I think, again, the smart drivers will watch and observe and learn and try and figure out what exactly is happening out on track, what's giving others an edge. It's almost kind of like dirt racing today with everything evolving so quickly. The tires seem to just drop off of you so fast.
Kyle Matthews, end of a longest line penalty, by the way, for the cause and effect system.
Yeah, so that is because of him causing that last caution. He's going to get sent to the back of the line. Gil up to third, and interestingly, this caution means it's closed him in on the top two. So the gap that he had to try and squeeze down before has gone away for him.
Entertained to see what happens here. The thing that's going to be really the most frustrating possibly for some is there's not as big of a tire separation for everyone who just ducked in and was really trying to stretch the strategy. It's only about a couple lap difference on green flag tires here with a quick caution.
Yeah, so again, important information though, because there's still plenty of racing left to go here. In fact, going to be still with about 50 laps left even after we get this restart.
Drivers telling stories about Yakima Speedway, one of the tracks based out of the Northwest, involving that paint scheme for Travis Barnes. He'll let the driver see us back in a little bit more. Off and away we go, 54 to go.
Got a great restart, putting himself as far away from Johnson as possible. Oh, and already we got a caution. Matthews again.
And he collects the 88 of Ryan McLeod at the other end of the straightaway too. And the leaders still are going full speed out on the front stretch here. They finally see him.
Yeah, and I'm trying to figure out what exactly happened to Matthews, because it almost like he got distracted and he gradually drifted to the outside wall. And then McLeod was sadly to his inside, gets sent for a wild ride.
Race control looking at that one, yeah. That is a very weird one. He said he wasn't able to go in the pits to fix his car. So he causes one more crash, by the way, for a caution flag. He's done.
That would leave us with, well, actually, it looks like Dagenstein is still out there, so we would still have 11 cars running.
Oh, different pit strategies coming in here. Travis Barnes just juked out Eric Johnson.
Not something we see all that often on GSRC or in the sim in general. I almost never see that work.
I've seen someone juke themselves into the wall. I've seen it work a couple times, but that time he just avoided it.
Wow. Yeah, that was very, very last second. Now, they're not penalized for going across those lines, so that is legal.
Oh, and Barnes is coming in this time.
Ooh. Okay. So Gil's going to retake the lead then. Well, now I'm baffled.
Now I'm really... Huh.
I
You
mean,
think with the white lines, do you think they may have counted as an unsafe pit entrance with the white lines here? I'm asking because this is still an older track on iRacing, so I'm not quite sure if that would be the case here.
I don't think so. I don't believe you get a penalty for doing that. He's taking service, so this is not a penalty. This
Yeah.
appears to be legitimate.
I'm surprised he did this. Here's the thing, he gets to stay in. He came out in his own here. He will not be cycled as the leader, though, as a result of this. He's going to be in P8 now, so he has the pleasure of fighting the whole entire field. Maybe he's thinking, I want to try and pass the field again?
Yeah, I mean, he seemed to deal with it pretty well, so it could have been a confidence builder that made him think, you know what, it's worth it because I managed to get up to the top spot in just a handful of laps. Might as well take the fresh tires and take the risk. Gill, on the other hand, is going to stay out.
Chris Torres a little fresher tires behind, along with Garber, Jones in fourth, Johnson Jr. in fifth. Off and away. Go a little bit later start, and Jones again struggles off a restart.
Yeah, he's already going to be swamped as Johnson gets by, and I think White had to think about it, but then decided the backstretch is just a little bit too twisty to attempt that one.
Battle for second heating up as the caution is out.
This is Degenstein. I think it's a self-spin. No! Oh, uh-oh. Uh-oh. It's the 11. The 11 tipped him. You'll see on the replay. I'm pretty certain they're going to put that one on Barnes, which will give him an EOL.
He was right against the yellow line. He's saying he's got spun out on race control. Race control is saying that he came down, though, on that, since he came from the top all the way to the bottom there.
All right, then. Well,
He's 32 laps down, by the way.
Yeah, that's, I can see why they made that call then. I was about to say that Barnes should enter the matrix because he dodged a bullet, but it seemed like it was a reasonable call on his part. We'll restart in 7th this time.
It's one position up. Now the interesting part is, say this trend continues or you get a caution with under 25 to go or even 30 to go, is there a point where you say, we're not going to take a lap? Barnes has been given an end of longest line penalty, in fact, for that.
Ooh, so, well, I guess my initial impression stands then. That they agreed and Barnes should not have tried to stick his nose in there.
Yeah, looks like it. That's going to cost him one position on the track, maybe two.
I think the bigger thing he needs to be wary of is we've already seen drivers who keep causing these cautions risk getting DQ'd, and that's what, if I was Barnes, I would be more worried about, because that one position loss won't hurt him too much.
Yeah, he's got the pace. It's just going to be, can he do it cleanly? He'll have to start behind Peterson, along with Ryan McLeod and Scott Degenstein, with the air cars running on track. 9 cars on the lead lap, 43 to go. Gill, your leader still, with Torres, Garber, Johnson, and White, your top 5. Again, for those for the first time on iRacing, EOL is short for end of longest line penalty for those tuning in for the first time to a broadcast on iRacing.
Sure is a lot of chatter amongst them. I've noticed that tends to be a lot more common on the oval side. Justin, did we ever discover why the reason that is? As someone who comes more from the road side, it always kind of surprises me.
I mean, in some of the official races, it's people board under caution. For others, well,
just chatty people.
Sometimes you have a fist fight over the radio.
Yeah. All right, I think, yeah, it looks like lights are off now.
Let me put it this way. Some drivers, with the safety of computers, very safe tonight.
Virtual racing safer in more ways than one.
Yeah, there'd be a few discussions in the pit lane if this wasn't the real-world South Sound Speedway, possibly. But, Gil, here at Concord, ready to go back racing. We're back underway.
Another great start from Gill. Not that great a one from Torres as Garber almost got him. In fact, Garber's got a great bit of momentum on the outside. He might get second place if he can sit it in deep.
The Garber's garage car trying to make the move on the high side. Torres drifting up a little bit. Trill's trying to hug the bottom side in his orange, black, and white 99 car. He drifts up right into the Nerf bar. Big check up. Here comes Johnson.
Oh, great heads up from the 14. He's going to be able to snatch that one away. It seems the bottom line's still the most desirable place to be around here.
Takes advantage to pass Garber. Garber nearly gets the back end of Johnson's car now. Gill's being able to run away now from all this craziness. Chris White also in the fun now for the battle for second, as Johnson back under attack by Garber from the bottom.
This is a perfect scenario for Isaiah. The last thing he wants, though, is a caution to crunch everybody together once again, as Garber's going to get to the inside of Torres. He might actually be able to get into second.
Still trying to work their way down as Torres moves back to the bottom. Kenneth Garber back up to P2. It's 1.6 seconds back behind your race leader, Gill, who just set a 17.6. The whole pack from all the fighting, 17.8s to 18 flats.
So Barnes right now is actually not going through as quickly as I thought. He's still dealing with Presley. Actually, no, I think this is maybe lap traffic, and now he's up to the double odd of Jones. It's not lap traffic, excuse me.
Yeah.
Presley was for position.
Yeah. Barnes is for position. He is still about 5 seconds behind, though. We'll need a caution for some luck. Jones has also been cycled back to P8. Still in this grouping, though. Garber only gaining about a tenth a lap or so, with a little bit fresher tires than the 24.
Boy, things have not calmed down, though, in that battle that he was in before. Johnson and White have been side by side for a while, and I think White's finally got to give it up as he's going to slot in behind. Oh,
Caution! Jeff Peterson, fresh out of the pit lane, too. The 23 had gotten some repairs done. Back under the tow truck he goes. This is why.
And poor Dagenstein was just in the wrong place at the wrong time. You're going to see Peterson clip the apron. That sends him around. Oh, goodness.
Hard contact and significant damage to that race car. Maybe towards the end of his night had been just out of the pit lane, too. That may open up the floodgates, though, for potential strategies and/or fights here, because Barnes with the freshest tires is now there. Jones, though, did take tires this caution, though. He was last on the lead lap, though.
So if I'm Gill, I'm going to do the opposite of what Barnes does, because he knows on the same strategy he tends to be slower. At this point, you got to roll the dice if you want to take the win.
I think so, too. Gill and Garber come in this time. No pit stop for Barnes. Torres stays out. Johnson stays out. White and Barnes stay out with Presley.
So if you're Gill, now you got to go like hell. So he's got to pick up the pace and really push, because Barnes is in front of him. Like I said, he's been generally faster. He's going to be on fairly older tires. But in the past, they've almost looked about even, which is why I say that you got to see Isaiah start to pick up the pace and try and do everything he can. The good news for him, though, is that Barnes is kind of mired amidst the midfield. The question is how quickly he's going to be able to dispose of these guys in front of him.
Still one more pace lap here. Chris Torres, 10 fast laps here. Do you think he can hold on here? Drivers are curious here on this tire cycle.
I don't know, because he's got about 6 lap older tires than Johnson. They looked about even before. Now, the worst thing that could happen to them is if they start fighting like we saw Torres, Johnson, and White do all through that last stint. That's just going to slow them down. It'll open the door for Travis Barnes. They almost have to make a little bit of a truce to work together and try and fend off that 11, because he's been lightning fast all day long.
Want to go signal this time. Get your popcorn out as we get ready to go back racing once again, approaching lap 100. Of course, many of these drivers have ran together in the past in various series, including this one. Back to the beginning of 2019 with several drivers in contention. Torres looking to win this one. 28 to go. We're backing away.
Torres, not as big of a jump as we've seen some drivers get. 14 was watching very attentively and has not fallen off as well. The 11 is already sizing these guys up.
Already a good run off the corner on Chris White. Took a peek. Not even built up the run yet.
This is not looking good for Torres. Johnson is all over him. In fact, he's a little wide coming through the tri-oval portion. That opens the door. The 14 thinks about it. He gets chopped off, though.
Johnson held up. Here comes Travis Barnes from the high side. Barnes coming up to 25 to go this time. Looking to rip back second. Watches as Torres checks up. 2 wide, nearly 3 wide for the lead as Torres drifts on the bottom. Barnes checks up.
Sorry, this is the battling that I was talking about. You can see how quickly he took advantage of them squabbling with each other, and I think he might have the lead. He's got the desired inside and fresher tires than Torres.
He's clear. Contact for second. Torres spun off the nose of Johnson Jr. And we're back under yellow, and that could shake up your top 5.
So are they going to penalize the 14 for that one, or is that... To me, it's almost more of a racing incident. Oh, looks like they're saying cause and effect, so I think that means they're giving it to the 14.
Yeah, it's really fair in terms of you have to think about it, cause and effect. It's fair to call it on everybody in that regard. Now, it's Barnes up in the race lead. And now he's got the track position. Gill, though, has the fresher tires in 4th.
Yeah, all that fighting, we had failed to look and see what the 24 was doing, and he's positioned himself very well. But make that second. Here comes White and Johnson.
So they're trying to flip this around here. There is a bit of damage on the 14. So this will put them on about 9 lap fresher tires or so. About 5 green flag laps. But they won't have the track position they had before. Chris Torres, of course, is in. Also in is Sean Jones once more for yet another pit stop. So at this point, how do you think this is going to play out now for this win? Because there's so many different strategies. This can go either direction here.
Okay, so 9 laps on the tires for Gill, 28 laps on the tires for Barnes. And again, you mentioned that's not necessarily all green flag laps. Let me look at the times here. Gill, 17.7, 17.7, 18.8. Some of that might have been passing cars. Barnes, who was also in a fight, 17.7, 17.7, 18 flat, 18.1. If I'm honest, I don't think it's looking good for Isaiah. I don't think he's got the legs for Travis. The 11 has been the class of the field all day long. And now that he's got clear air and a restart where he controls it, as long as we don't have a caution, I'm expecting him to just run away with everything.
The cause and effect, it's both Torres and Johnson Jr. who will be getting end of longest line penalties for that caution.
Shared responsibility.
Yep. Both of them brought out the yellow, right? One to go signal. Should be worth noting that back in the springtime, in May specifically, when this series got to racing, there was a street stock race at USA. Guess who won that race? Isaiah Gill, part of that campaign. Can he do it here tonight with fresher tires than Travis Barnes here with 19 to go? We'll see how these drivers play it. Off and away goes the 11.
Decent start. Gill wasn't dropped completely, but lost a little bit of ground. He's going to have to hope those tires are good enough that he can reel him back in.
That victory referred to was the season opener back in the spring when the initial running for this series got underway. The drivers, though, with the even fresher tires are coming. White making some moves. Garber up to 3rd. Now, 4 cars separate by 1.7 seconds for the top 4, and Presley's holding on.
I was going to say, credit to the 4. He's got 50-lap-old tires. He's playing the long game here, but it doesn't seem like it's working out very well. He's dropping like a rock.
Yeah, that's a tough thing to try and do, is stay with this pack on the older tires. 16 to go this time. 0.6 of a second, now the gap or so between Barnes and Gill. Barnes knew he's scraping the wall that time, though.
This time by 17.8 for Christopher White, highest car on the fresh tires. Garber, the one in front of him, 17.5.
Now, this is going to be where how quick this fight can go for P2 on back may determine how things go.
Caution.
Or we can get a caution right on the bottom of the racetrack. It's Peterson again, 7 laps down. Back from yellow, and Jones also with a bit of trouble.
And the 23 just loses it all on his own. 16-lap-old tires, so not terribly old, but looks like maybe damage potentially contributing to that, the way that this race has been going. Don't see any on the car, but it was all out of shape.
See, there's the spin. And the 00 was also in the garage area around that same time, 4 laps down now. I believe he had just pulled off recently, though. Yes, he spun on the green flag, actually. He spun into the back of the field, didn't bring out a caution, apparently.
Yeah, I think Jones maybe just decided to call it a day. He's relatively far back, so it's not worth risking other people's races and finishing this one under yellow. We want to see a race finish under green here. We want to see these drivers duke it out all the way to the checkers.
I want to see how these drivers handle themselves too, indeed. Now, we talked about a little bit about how this series functions. Of course, you talked about the future events. The series, as tradition, runs in various different types of cars, as talked about at the top of the broadcast. Some of the trucks, some of the cars rather, they ran in last season, for example, during the start of the summertime. Some of the super late models, street stocks, I believe they ran in the trucks at one point. Also, of course, these legend cars. In the end, it was Eric Johnson who won that championship with 363 total points. Torres and Presley in the top 5 overall in points totals, with Andrew Johnson rounding out the top 4 during those standings. So there's the mix of different types of cars and different drivers, which could be brought out with these races, because several drivers, such as Bart Hector Jr., known for his abilities on the short tracks in the late models, came out and won a race, for example.
Yeah, I love when series do this. This is why I like the majors too, is because you get a variety of cars. You get a sense of who is the most versatile. Granted, a lot of times the fastest drivers are just simply fast no matter what you stick them in, which is disappointing for me, who's never really been all that fast. And Travis Barnes, I expect him to continue to show himself well.
Sean Jones not having a great night, by the way, just drove into the wall, checking up for the back of the line. That was that down off of turn 3. But expecting the one to go this time, under 10 to go.
I was wrong then. I thought Jones would park it and call it done, but he's going to try and attempt a little bit more here.
Jeff Peterson is still in a position where if Jones pulls off, he can finish P9, so points are on the line technically there.
I want to know if the 4 is going to have something good happen out of this, because he's still on tires since many laps ago, 58 laps ago at this point.
I'm surprised he hasn't used the set in this one. Off and away we go. 9 laps to go.
Pretty single file for our leaders. The 4 that I mentioned is struggling badly. In fact, he's causing it. You can see a 3-wide situation as he plugs up both Johnson and Torres behind him.
Torres nearly running him over. In fact, Johnson now trying to box him in. Johnson clear for the spot. The 4, though, not backing down. He's not giving a lot of space here for these cars. Now the caution is out, though, because everybody else crashed. Jones, Peterson, Matthews, Degenstein, around them, everyone stopped.
Let's see where this started. It looks like between the 29 and the 23, down into turn 1, they both wanted the same bit of racetrack, and well, just didn't quite work how they hoped.
That's going to end somebody's race. And there was already contact with the 13 that triggered the move there.
Oh, whoa.
Four cars involved. Big one.
Yeah, the 00 kind of barreled into things. Sometimes it's hard to judge what exactly is going to happen. You don't want to just stab on the brakes in these cars because then they'll quickly just whip around on you. They're not made for that. So even though it looks like ARCA brakes, he couldn't just, stop it on a dime. He had to try and see how it's going to play out and just slow it up as he could. And unfortunately, he ran out of track before running into other cars.
Lucky dog goes to 13 because even though there was contact there, he wasn't in the actual crash for the caution flag. Drivers have been noted if they are part of a caution. At the end of this race, drivers will still receive an EOL and will get that before the end of the race, meaning if a wreck happens and is caused by any other driver, they will be pushed down the pylon, potentially, if they're on the lead lap and bring a caution flag that ends this race. Last restart here, Joe.
Yeah, no green-white checkers here. You got to be in the position you want to be in. Hopefully we finish under green like I was talking about. I'm trying to see how many laps we're going to get to go. The lights stay on. So we're looking at 2-lap shootout, I think.
Give or take, yes. This is going to be where pressure is on. The 88, a lap down, having to take the tow after flipping upside down. Barnes, Gill, Garber, White, and Presley, your top 5. Who do you think has the best shot here? Because Barnes has been the king of the field tonight.
It's got to be Barnes. Unless Gill puts a bumper to him, I can't see the 11 losing it.
He's just ran away off these starts all night, it seems, despite having older tires than anyone else behind him. He's been matching the pace of the drivers on fresh tires.
It is going to be a 2-lap shootout.
One to go signal. 7 drivers on the lead lap. Barnes, Gill, Garber, White, Presley, Johnson Jr., Torres, and McLeod. Check that no McLeod on your lead lap. Barnes already off and away, catches everyone sleeping. Green flag waves, 2 to go.
He's just got to be calm here. He's got to keep it together. Either a caution or just his own pace are going to win him this race, and only his own mistakes can lose it for him.
And if there is a caution before the white, race is official. No incidents. White flag is out. Final lap from Concord. Here comes Gill. One last shot.
Gill gets close. He's getting desperate here. And credit to him, he's close some of the ground. He's just not nearly anywhere to make a pass happen.
Not close enough to send it. He tries, though. Bit of a slide. Travis Barnes wins at Concord to start the South Sound Speedway eRacing Series campaign.
My hat is off to Barnes, but also to Gill. Like I said, for him to pull that gap down to less than a car length at the very end shows that he was not giving up until the fat lady sang. Unfortunately, she started hitting her notes before he could get beyond him.
And already, bit of celebration. Drivers asking, how do they want to do their celebrations and photos here? Nose to nose is what they plan to do. And as Barnes burns it down, post-race coverage comes up in just a moment. You're watching Global SimRacing Channel, live from the virtual Concord Speedway. Welcome back to tonight's coverage of the South Sound Speedway eRacing Series from the virtual Concord Speedway on the iRacing service. Justin Prince, Joe Peak with you with Sean Ambrose in the director's seat. This series is presented by Key Property Services, where service is key, and by United Roofs. From leak to peak, it's yours you seek. Travis Barnes seeked a victory to start off this campaign and got it by just more than a tenth of a second over Isaiah Gill. Kenneth Garber rounding out your top three, with Eric Johnson Jr., your reigning champion in the series, rounding out the top five. Torres, Presley, McLeod, Jones, and Peterson rounded out a topsy-turvy top 10.
From there, it was drivers who didn't have the best of days. Matthews did see the checkered flag, but he was 31 laps down in 11th. Dagenstein as well did the same laps down in 12th. Garski, unfortunately, had to park it just because the stewards weren't happy with how he was driving. So his day in his race ended well prematurely.
When you cause several caution flags, that's the case there for that situation. But Joe, your thoughts on how this race played out tonight?
I think it was a bit of a learning curve. I said that it was going to be a very tricky car and track combination, and I think we were proved such. But I don't want to say that this is all negatives, because you look at the cream that rise to the top, and it was impressive, some of the racing that was done up towards the front of the field, as drivers were sometimes 3 wide. That's not easy to do in larger cars, let alone these things, and the way that they handle. So I have to say, all in all, I'm excited to see how the rest of the season goes, and looking forward to Charlotte.
Looking forward to that as well, and drivers have been pumped up for that one. Your expectations overall for when this series goes to that track. Some of the drivers on their way out from the track saying, can't wait for Charlotte Dega.
Yeah, and there's a lot of drivers who have been on iRacing who are familiar with that combination. I know a lot of my oval races were street stocks at Charlotte. It's very fun, and the Dega comparison is very apt, because it is essentially just flat out your way around there, and that's why it's so popular. Is you can just hop in and learn how to run it pretty easily. Now, learning how to be fast is a whole nother thing. So you'll still see a difference between drivers there, and it'll be a little bit more strategy than it was here.
Yeah, it's going to be fun to see which drivers end up rising to the top there with a different car combination and track combination, and how they handle things. A lot of them handled it well, as talked about in the springtime. See how they handle it in the fall time, though. New campaign, new challenges. With that, we'd like to thank you for tuning in to tonight's exciting action from Concord. We'd also like to thank the Thurston County-based facility, South Sound Speedway, for organizing this fun series for many drivers based in the Northwest, including its real-world competitors, as well as many others who run on the sim and at various other tracks in the region. We'd also like to thank the presenting sponsors for this series tonight, Key Property Services and Roofs, for the work they do when it comes to working with this respective series. We'd also like to thank the companies who provide the software and hardware for broadcasts listed up on screen, with special thanks to Jude Lalonde, who provides her wonderful music. See the screen for how to get a hold of more of her great work. Thanks to the team today in Joe Peak and Sean Ambrose. If you'd like to find out more about GSRC, including upcoming races, you can find it at Global SimRacing Channel.com. If you'd like to help support the channel, you can check out our merchandise for sale at gsrc.stormvy.com. Or you can check out our social media on Twitter at GSR Channel, Facebook at Global SimRacing Channel, and Instagram at GSRC_Graham. Don't forget to head over to YouTube page and hit that big red subscribe button, as well as the notification bell, so you don't miss a moment on the Global SimRacing Channel. As talked about, the next race is at Charlotte in the Street Stocks. That'll take place Saturday, October 24th. Be sure to buckle up and tune in. It should be a wild one. Even more wilder than tonight, possibly. We also have upcoming races for other series listed up on screen, so check those out and mark them down in your calendar. Until next time, race clean, race hard, and we'll see you on the track.